Hello, my fellow readers. This is Dark Symphony 777 with another fan fiction review. As always, a link to the story will be in the description below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notifications, and leave a comment in the comment section below on your thoughts of the story. I finalize my opinion. My opinion is not indicative of my own, so please respect that. So, first off, I'm at my friend's house. But he said I can review, so I'm going to take advantage of it. So, the story I am reviewing today is called Not This Time, Fate by Koer All Around. It's another RWBY story. This one and another one was actually suggested by the same person. And I finally got around to reading at least this one. The other one, which was Beacon Civil War, I believe it's called. That's gonna be coming up a little bit. So don't worry, just wait. And the anticipation was great. I was like, why would the person suggest these two stories? And I finally read Not This Time, Fate. How do I go about saying this? The best way I can go about it is by just laying it out right before the review. This story is a masterpiece. Like, this story is phenomenal. No complaints. Nothing wrong. It's to the point that that this story has actually beaten Better Off Alone as my personal favorite fanfiction of all time. That's how good this story is. This is the first fanfiction since, I would say, Darkness Arises Reborn to actually be on par with Better Off Alone. But this story eclipses it. I was just caught off guard by how good this story is. Because when I read Professor Arc, which was the last story I read by this author, it was good. Like, I wouldn't say it was Better Off Alone tier, but it's like, it's just below. It's like, I like the entertainment, I liked how hilarious it is. I was wondering, should I review more? But then the same person who suggested Professor Arc suggested I review this story and then Beacon Civil War. And it's like, hey, I'm going to review this one too. Answered my question. But other stories kind of got in the way because I do like a roulette wheel for when I have like a bunch of stories, so I can just pick one. So whichever one I review is at random. This story is, I never thought I would see the day that I know it bears repeating, but it really bears repeating. I never thought I'd see the day that a fanfiction would be better than Better Off Alone, let alone a RWBY fanfiction. I'm not a big RWBY person. I know the show. I have a friend who was a fan of the show, mostly criticizes it, but he's like, I want to see it do better. This is just, and it's even worse. I kept trying to explain it to him, and he's like, I don't get it. He's like, that's fine. Yeah, because this type of story is kind of really hard to pronounce without kind of going into what kind of story this is specifically. And I think that's where we should start. I know I usually do the plot first, but it bears repeating what kind of story this is before we get into that. So, what's the best way to describe this type of story? It is what's affectionately called a Peggy Sue story. Get your mind out of the thing. It has nothing to do with Mary Sue's stuff like that. It has nothing to do. I'm pretty sure it doesn't, because despite the fact it has the word Sue in its name. Peggy Sue. There's always something ending with Sue that make it like a Sue thing. As far as I know, this doesn't have Peggy Sue's don't have anything to do with that. I don't even know where the name came from. So yeah, just let's leave it at that. Peggy Sue's are a type of time travel stories, actually, that specifically refer to it's hard to explain. So, okay, so you know how a regular time travel story, you have a person using some kind of device or some kind of mystical object, something that deals with time. You are in regular time travel stories. You are physically taken to a specific point in time, and you get to watch those events play out, and you get to, and there's always the risk of changing the timeline, grandfather clause sort of thing. A Peggy Sue story, on the other hand, what would happen is a person would be mentally brought back in time, not physically, just mentally to an earlier point in their lives, and they have to relive everything again. And usually Peggy Sue's are just mostly used for like wish fulfillment. They're not exactly. Now they're kind of divisive among like the various genres, mainly because a lot of Peggy Sue stories tend to be pure wish fulfillment. I don't say it that way. I mean, yeah, there's some wish fulfillment in some of them, but I think any type of story can be good if it's written well, and this one is written well because this story is actually a massive deconstruction of the Peggy Sue genre, mainly built around wish fulfillment and like, oh, everything's going to be okay. So now that I explained that, let's actually go into the plot and buckle up. This is gonna be a really, really long one. The story actually takes place between season 1 and season 3. The beginning of the story actually takes place sometime after season 3 of RWBY, where John, I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce the name, John Arc gets killed by Cinder. And then he wakes up in his home village, and he realizes, I died again. And then you basically get the whole gist of what's been going on. He's been reliving the events of seasons 1 to 3 of RWBY, like they all meet up at Beacon and everything, for what's going on 1,000 years at this point. And it's left them a very bitter shell of himself. So, so at this point in time, with all the loops happening, he goes, I'm just gonna try and train and try and extend the time long enough so I can train properly to basically stop Cinder and prevent everything from happening. However, he wakes up, he goes to take Corkera Moors. A lot of these names are like really hard to pronounce, and I'm not even 100% sure if I'm pronouncing them right. If I pronounce it wrong, please don't blame me. Please don't blame me. So he goes down. He tries to steal the family sword and shield, and he finds out it's gone. It's missing, and his father is out on a mission. His mother walks by saying, "Hey, can you go hang out with your daughter?" And so John decides to go hang out with his family. During this time, he realizes, maybe I shouldn't just rush myself to Beacon this time. And he decides to come to the idea of using this specific loop to basically take his own personal vacation. So basically, he just wants to relax with his family, rest his mind, rest his soul, and he can just have some fun and and hopefully be prepared, be more mentally fortified for the next loop when it happens, because he's convinced that the next loop is gonna happen. Spoiler alert, it's not. Now, before I continue on, there is some rules of this type of story to note. Usually these types of stories try to change certain events, but there's always that risk of certain things going the same way. So, for instance, let's take canon. In canon, John sneaks into Beacon by stealing his sword and the family weapons, and sneaking in and just basically trying to just sneak in and fudge his grades and stuff like that. In this story, he doesn't. He willingly doesn't. But events change that the end result of it is still him going to Beacon. It's just a different way of it happening. So there's like 3 possibilities. 1, nothing changes. 2, basically the entire events drastically change. So it's completely different from what he experienced. And 3, the events happen, but they happen different enough. But they kind of happen in a different way. So that way you get the end result of the first path, but the way it goes about it is slightly changed. So that way it's kind of confusing. And that's basically John's philosophy throughout the story, because he's lived for all these years. He lived for literally over 1,000 years. So he kind of knows the events of seasons 1 to 3, forward and back, and front and back. So when stuff changes that he doesn't know about, then it legitimately catches off guard, because he's never experienced before. He experienced all the events he experienced the initiation, Mountain Glen, the food fight, the Vital. I probably pronounced that. The whole attack on Beaten by Cinder, and all the more smaller stuff like Pyrrha getting the Fall Maiden powers, him stealing Crocaramar's, and kind of getting into Beacon. This is different because in this story he doesn't steal Crocaramar's. I'll come back to this in a little bit, but just bear with me. I'm using this as an example. So John is relaxing. However, a Beowulf sneaks into his village. He's completely confused because this never happened before. Because again, this is supposed to be deconstruction of Witchfund. This is supposed to be a realistic take of what would happen if you constantly mentally go back in time. Beowulf attacks his family. John fights off the Beowulf. He basically uses a pipe and bashes it to the point where his hands are actually on fire, are burning, and he gets clawed, and then his aura gets activated by his father. And he recovers, and what happens as he recovers is he starts to picture why did the Beowulf have come? Because the Beowulf never came. But then he rationalizes it in his head by thinking, well, okay, I always left before this point in time, so it's not unrealistic that the Beowulf might not show up. But at this point, he starts to think something weird is going on. And this is actually exemplified by 3 events. First off, the train, when he recovers, him and his family go to the train to go to Vale, where Beacon is located. He suddenly realizes that the front half of the train changed to the train from the RWBY Black trailer. So it's not even. So he's kind of weirdly figuring out. It's wait a minute, this ain't right. It's he can kind of figure out the Beowulf thing, but he can't really. But he's thrown a red flag once he realizes this. Honestly, he's also having sex with women. Apparently, when the 2 years before they go to Beacon and all that stuff, he basically gets a reputation of a MILF womanizer. Yeah, that actually happened in the story, and it carries over here, where Blake and Adam, they bust into the front of the train to plant the explosives so Blake can separate from Adam and stuff like that. John is in there doing the whoopee, as you do, and he's still naked, and Blake's kind of Blake is trying to stare so hard in his face, nope, don't look down, don't look down, don't look down, don't look Blake, don't look down. And then the whole events of the Black trailer happen. Adam plants the bomb. Blake questions, like, well, there's innocents on the train. Adam's like, I don't give a fuck. And Blake's like, no, I ain't doing this anymore. With John decouples the train, and Blake runs into John's family. And there's the Blake, and then the black trailer. And again, at this point in time, John is seriously questioning what the hell is going on. Like, what is no? Now there is something going on. I can possibly rationalize the Beowulf. I can't rationalize this. Is fate itself fucking with me? Is it? Well, it gets better, because as a treat, John's family treats him to a concert, one by one Weiss Schnee, i.e. the white trailer. At least I think it's the white trailer. I know basically the whole main dynamic is actually established where after Weiss gives the concert, they offer a raffle, saying that one person's gonna meet Weiss Schnee before she goes off to Beacon, and it just happens to be John. And so John, wanting to steal his emotions, talks to Weiss in like a very dismissive manner. And he basically talks to Weiss for like a minute. And they kind of see each other off. And then John runs into Pyrrha. John's now realizing, it's like, okay, yeah, that's okay, now fate is definitely fucking with me. And throughout his stay in Vale, he constantly runs into all the characters. Most of the characters. So he runs into Nora, Ren, Pyrrha, Ruby, Weiss, Blake a couple times. Yang, not yet. I got to her in a little bit. And, he's basically going in and out of his way. It's like, no. I know what you're doing. You're trying to make me go to Beacon, Fate. You want me to suffer. That's basically John's mindset. And then he goes to the bar because he's like, no, I don't want to hear my parents have sex. No. Nope. He goes to the bar where the yellow trailer happens. He gets drunk off his ass. Yang strolls up, shows him a picture of Raven. John only slightly reacts to it, basically holding a glass, and he cracks it. But he schools himself up to try and hide the fact that he knows. Yang catches that, and then they proceed to have a bar fight. So Yang gets really pissed, they get into a fight. John starts to have a PTSD flashback from all the times he's been, like, tortured by Cinder and hurt by her. And he actually beats the ever-loving shit out of Yang, to the point where Yang, the bare-fisted person, has to actually activate her gauntlets, her shotgun gauntlets, in, like, desperation, because she realizes that he's actually about to seriously hurt her. They get arrested, both John and Yang, and then John meets Ozpin. Ozpin gives John an ultimatum. Either you join Beacon, and we'll sweep this all under the rug, because it's like, well, in essence, Yang assaulted a civilian, but if he were a student, we can have some leeway and have this swept under the rug. Your choice, John. Either you accept the invitation for Beacon, or let Yang go to jail. John, in a crisis of confidence for like just that one part, reluctantly decides to join Beacon because he really doesn't want Yang to go to jail. He's like, she's still his friend. He realizes that I don't want her to suffer, and I don't want Ruby to suffer, so I'll join. But him and his family have a plan. They decide that he's gonna willingly get himself expelled because also they put like a tracker on his foot. He's gonna get himself expelled by being the most lazy, apathetic person ever. Like, oh, I'm gonna make all these excuses. I'm gonna do all this stuff that piss off everyone, and I mean everyone, from Ozpin to Glinda all of his friends, so that way he can go back to his family and relax and enjoy his vacation. So the events of the first couple episodes happen until the initiation speech, where, for example, of him trying to work his magic and gets him fired. When Ozpin delivers his speech, John actually takes like a big tent and he starts hammering in like gigantic metal stakes into the ground right in front of Ozpin, and so he's constantly like hammering him, and he's like, "Are you done?" Oh, yeah. So, and then continue speech, and stuff like that. So then it continues as normal to the whole initiation thing, where they get launched in the forest and they have to try and find a team. What happens in canon is Weiss meets RWBY and then all that, and then they form Team RWBY. What happens here is that John is completely apathetic. First off, we get like a very hilarious thing. It's like, oh, these launches into the forest. Yeah. Do we have to? Can we just jump off? Maybe. And then John, of course, jumps off the cliff, and he has like a parachute, and he pisses out. And he literally pisses off everyone, except for Ozpin, who's like, fair play. Fair play. However, the whole parachute thing is actually a plan. So what happens is Weiss, as normal, Weiss meets up with RWBY, but Weiss doesn't want anything to do with RWBY. So she closes her eyes and keeps and constantly stares away from her, and they wander around, and then they meet John stuck in a tree, who she thinks is dead. He's actually napping. That's another thing. He actually tries to do to get out of class, is just constantly nap anywhere and everywhere whenever given the chance. Weiss, goes to save him because she's like thinking, oh no, he's dead, oh no, and he's like, no, I'm snapping. Oh. And Weiss is kind of stuck in a sore spot because he's like, RWBY or John? And so Weiss decides to, it's like, you want to be my partner? It's like, And then, of course, they meet Pyra. Pyra gives Weiss an ultimatum. Like, you already saw the eyes of these two characters before me. So it's like, you get them, and I'll pick whoever you don't pick. And so Weiss is kind of like stuck between a choice between RWBY or John. and Weiss decides, ultimately, I'll pick John. Like, I can't see myself being friends with RWBY. I can't see myself being partners with RWBY. And so what happens is the whole events thing happened. Like they go to the cave. They meet Blake and Yang, because that's the team. John, Weiss, Blake, and Yang. Not Yang. I don't know why I said Yang. Of course, the whole events happen they don't meet the big bird, but they deal with the scorpion. And John basically, the scorpion goes up to John by himself. He kills the scorpion thing. He tells him it's like, oh yeah, the thing tripped and fell off the cliff. Yeah. Most of them believe him except for Weiss, because keyword Weiss is going to be important in this story. The whole thing happens. So basically, the team composition is the same except for John and RWBY. So they basically just switched teams. So we got Team RWBY, which is like RWBY's team, and then Team Jazzberry, which is led by John. Weiss is upset because it's like, no, I'm a Weiss. I mean, I'm a Schnee. I'm supposed to be the leader. And then a bunch of various shenanigans happen. We're actually going to cut a large part, because just talking about the plot by minute a is going to be way too long, because honestly I can spend nearly an hour just talking about the plot itself. I ain't talking about the plot that long. A bunch of stuff happens over the course of the 3 seasons. So the cliff note thing is, they start to open up together. John tries to basically throw away his chances of staying in Beacon. Yang, knowing why John is there, is kind of like trying to be peacekeeper. Weiss is continuously upset over John being lazy, and then thanks to some help from Port, decides to, you know what, as a Schnee, I can't let this travesty end. I will make you, John Arc, the best leader you can be. And then Blake is like constantly trying to think about, it's like, don't think about his dick. Don't think about his dick. Don't think about his dick. Wait, does he remember me from the train? Don't think about his dick. And, of course, John basically tries his best to piss him off. It doesn't work with Yang that much because, again, Yang knows why John's here and he really doesn't, and she kind of understands. It works with Weiss and Blake. And then we kind of fast forward because a lot of stuff kind of meanders about. There's still character development, but in terms of plot, it kind of slows down until season 2, where the big changes start happening in terms of the plot of the show. So the dock attack happens. Ruby doesn't meet Penny, and this actually tips off John because he gets like frightened over this. He also has like a flashback to when a previous timeline where he actually dated Blake. So this is another deconstruction because over the loops he basically starts doing the wish fulfillment, and so he basically tries to date the various members of his team, except for Ren, who's like a dude, and John doesn't swing that way, and Weiss, because no matter how hard he tried, in all the loops, he couldn't really get Weiss to fall in love with him. And one of the timelines is, I believe, the one where he kills. There's one where he actually bombs Cinder's Beacon classroom. Beacon bedroom, and basically kills her, Emerald, and Mercury. But Adam goes crazy, starts murdering everyone, and then basically slits Blake's throat in front of John, as you know, as all that, as you do. So the docks happen. Blake and Sun do go to go to the docks to stop the White Fang. John already knows that the docks are happening, but the docks are going to happen. But then he kind of has a brain freeze when Ruby comes in. It's like, well, where's Blake? I think she meant something about the docks. It's like, it's fine. Wait. And he realizes Ruby is right in front of him, not at the docks, not with Penny, and he realizes, oh shit. He goes to steal a bulkhead, basically goes Evil Knievel, crashes into another bulkhead, and just basically does all the stuff, sets the whole thing on fire. It's a fist fight with Roman. Both of them are just kind of, they do fancy stuff, but then it just evolves into like just punching each other on the ground and gouging eyes, and just it's like inflict as much pain as possible. Which ends with John nearly dying because Roman is about to actually just kill him. John actually reaches into his pocket, pulls out all of his cigars, crushes them, which kind of pisses off Roman. It's like, bitch. And then they're like, since they're surrounded by dust, he basically just puts the cigar ashes on the dust, and it just sets off a chain reaction. Everyone survives. Basically, we're also introduced to Neo super early. Since Roman technically almost died. And it kind of flash forwards with like John, still doing this empathetic thing, but everyone's starting to sympathize with him, especially Blake, since John, despite being apathetic and not really caring about anyone, went out of his way to save her, and she's kind of struggling with this, and this kind of started the whole running gag. I think it actually started before the docs, but it started a running gag where everyone started calling Team Jazzberry like family, like by calling Weiss the mom, John the dad, and then Blake and Yang the daughter, because like they're just the disobedient kids. It's just like, it's like, I'm Yang, I'm just gonna do stupid stuff. Oh, and Blake, she's just gonna read a bunch of smut. It's like, I don't read smut. It's like, what are you reading then? Nothing. And of course, literally at this point in time, everyone is on to that fact. So it's like, we're just gonna run with the joke into the ground as much as you can. As some various other stuff happens, they start to treat themselves more as a family. Yang and Blake start to try and figure out what's wrong with John and try and figure out his mindset, because they think he has like mental problems or depression or PTSD, like various stuff. Yang goes grasps why John's family actually comes in, and they run into Blake at the cafe, and John's being very protective. Leads to like a very hilarious situation where Yang thinks like him and Blake had sex. Yeah, they're like more out of like most awkward timings, like Yang calls John, picks up the phone, and no, Yang calls Blake's phone, John picks it up, it's like hello? John, what the? Why do you have Blake's phone? Because me and Blake are sleeping together. And then of course Yang goes like, oh. And I'm kind of laughing at it. But we're going to fast forward over the course of season 2. John tries to stop Blake from kind of breaking down and stuff like that, because he still wants to protect her, but he thought maybe I could at least try and just trying to see what I can do, which leads to another deconstruction, because the thing is, and Peggy Sue Stories is, just because you change something doesn't mean it's going to always stay the same. So something he realizes that every time when John tries to change the events of the Etal Festival, or tries to change something at Cinder's plan, instead of like, nothing changes, Cinder adapts. So she constantly realizes that something's happening, and she actually changes the plan, which actually throws John off, because now he doesn't know what's going to happen. So hence why in this timeline, now that he's actually trying to stop Cinder's plan, he's trying to keep everything as close to what happened in the canon as possible, because he realizes if he changes anything too drastically, he won't know what's going to happen, because now Cinder will actually start changing her plans, thus leading to John not being able to figure out what's going on until too late, where possibly he may reset again. So he starts grabbing sneaking phones and calling Crow, and just leaving them there to be tracked, so that way Crow can actually grab the White Fang warehouses before Blake can show up, and just kind of helping her out, say, hey, they're getting the White Fang. You can, you don't have to worry. Of course, the whole thing with Blake and the Paladins do still happen, but but what happens is they get the Paladins before Mountain Glen, which leads to John being hurt by Weiss, because John is actually pretending to be a member of White Fang, and also he also has to do this incognito stuff, because he actually realizes his aura is actually gone, like he doesn't have aura anymore. And he's trying to figure out what's going on. Of course, he gets hurt. He gets he kind of suffers a little injury, and they start patching him. Excuse me, got an itch. And everything kind of goes well until the events of Mountain Glen, where everything just goes to shit for John. So what happened is, instead of Oobleck going, it's Crow going and Team Jazzberry. They all go. John knows where the whole events of Mountain Glen end up. Blake follows him. He has all this tech and stuff like that. Blake sneaks up on him. Blake nearly falls into the gap. I think in canon, Ruby falls. It's been a while since I've seen season 3. I haven't really seen all of season 3, so I don't really know for sure. John manages to save Blake, but he falls down instead. He runs into Neo and Roman. Roman, realizing, he's like, hey, wait a minute. You're the guy who's been messing up my plans. What the hell? How the hell do you know so much about this? So he actually drugs up John with a bunch of drugs to get him to open up. And basically, John is forced to tell the whole thing about him being, like, resetting time and stuff like that to Roman. Roman is like, alright, I'm going to bring in a Cinder and figure out what's going on. Yeah, let's go, though. Let's go. Then the rest of the team is actually informed. They go and try and save John, and then find out John is, like, drugged up. Blake's also there, kind of hidden around. We had a hilarious moment where, like, Roman confronts Blake, and Blake still has, like, John stuff, and so she kind of digs around, finds a taser. It's like, what are you going to do with that? I'm going to do something I learned from John. And just basically tasers Roman in the balls. Which is, honestly, that's actually hilarious. But it also does change a lot of the events of the breach. Because for one thing, Yang doesn't fight Neo, Crow does, because they don't have the paladins to distract them. And so they basically go down. The White Fang with the chainsaw, Yang fights them, and Blake and Weiss go to continue on the train. And then we get something very disturbing. John was wrapped up on so much drugs that his mind kind of temporarily warped. And he turned into a raving mad beast. So he actually starts killing every single White Fang on the front end of the train. And then as they get through the train, Weiss and Blake kind of realize it's strangely quiet. And then they realize something's off. And then they open one of the trains too, and the entire train company coated in blood and body parts. They get sick. They're just like, what? And then they slowly start going to the front of the train. Roman realizes, like, wait a minute. And John gets into the front of the train. Him and Roman fight again. And then Blake and Weiss manage to get to the front of the train. They're, like, nearly throwing up multiple times. They see them fighting. Roman, still remembering Cinder's plan, tries to surrender. He's like, I surrender. Like, I'll wait. And Weiss manages to save John. Manages to help John and calm him down. And I know what you're thinking. I was like, what about everything with, like, the dance? Like, I kept that part intentionally secret because I don't want to spoil that part. I'm going to be spoiling the big thing later, but I at least want to keep the dance. I at least want to keep the dance thing secret. It doesn't really do anything in terms of the plot, except for, like, one specific plot point, so I skipped that. So Weiss saves John twice because they realize, oh wait, we're still in the front of the train and it's about to crash into the wall. Weiss forms an ice barrier to protect them. They get separated. John is still hopped up on drugs. Everyone's kind of, like, freaking out because they don't know what's going on. The Grims start pouring out the breach. However, what happened is John leaves a tip to Weiss's sister because Winter actually comes down much, much earlier. And warned him, is like, hey, there's going to be a train from Mountain Glen crashing into the mountain, letting a bunch of Grimm into Vale. Be ready. Winter actually knows, the fact that this mysterious person, which is John, helped out with the White Fang, decides to give him the benefit of the doubt. It's like, all right, I have some vacation time built up. I'll use it. So basically, Winter and all the students actually fight back the Grimm and push him back. Weiss saves John again, and he collapses, and he has to recover from basically all the drugs and everything, and he's going through withdrawal. And now they're actually a true family, except for John and Weiss, who, spoiler alert, Weiss is actually starting to have feelings for John because she basically starts to fall in love with him. And then, of course, now we got season 3. John is recovering from withdrawal, and he's trying to think of a plan of how to slow down Cinder. Because he realizes at this point in time, Pyrrha, at this point in time, Pyrrha is going to become the Fall Maiden. Except this time it's not. See, what happens is, now I'm bringing up the dance. When they do the spar, which is basically Mercury versus Pyrrha to basically test, to basically see if she has what her semblance is, because of course Pyrrha has like the magnetism semblance, which is key to Cinder's plan of starting everything. John actually offers to fight Pyrrha instead. And actually does he actually does fight her because of the rules that everyone has to at least fight one time before everyone resets. And since John fought Pyrrha, Cinder can't fight Pyrrha. Cinder fights Weiss instead. Cinder completely just mops the floor at Weiss. What happens is Cinder goes to try and pick up Weiss's sword and then purposely malfunctions it by throwing her fire at Weiss. John gets in the way, kicks all the fire, and collapses. And of course, everyone besides John thinks it's just a normal malfunction. John knows what's up because he realized Cinder was trying to kill Weiss. It's at this point in time that Weiss kind of really wanted to try and get her feelings for John. So at the dance, when Weiss and John are trying to figure out their feelings for one another, Pyrrha and RWBY see someone over at the CCT or CTD or CV, whatever, the big tall thing that where Cinder puts her virus in. And Pyrrha and RWBY go to stop them, where Pyrrha actually shows off her powers. Then, this is one of the two main reasons what happens next. Instead of Pyrrha getting the Fall Maiden powers, it's Weiss that gets the Fall Maiden powers. Because Pyrrha inadvertently revealing her power semblance in a way to public. And also because Pyrrha is on the same team as RWBY, and in the story, Osmond says, like, well, the Silver Eyes actually weaken the Maiden, so it would kind of be weird to have the Maiden and the Silver Eyes on the same team where Silver Eyes kind of weaken the Maiden. It's like it would just want to work. Weiss offers to take up the Maiden's power because she realizes that she wants to protect her family. Like I said, the running gag with them being family, that actually kind of culminates here with all them realizing they are, especially John, realizing that they are his family. Like, just like his biological family, after all this time, RWBY, Weiss, Gang, Blake, Nora, Pyrrha, and Ren, they all become his family as well. John completely freaks out because in all his times of all the loops, Pyrrha's always been the Maiden. It's never been anyone else besides Pyrrha. And now he's kind of breaking down mentally because now he's realizing he's kind of having feelings for Weiss too. Even after all these loops, they kind of made him want to stay as far away romantically from anyone as possible because he still thinks, well, I'm gonna die and they're gonna forget, and it just hurt more. And then comes the reveal, because this is something I was actually anticipating for the rest of the entire story. These types of stories, whenever something like this happens, I sincerely suspected, and this is not really common, but it does happen from time to time in certain stories, of a knowledge bomb. Okay, so from the beginning, I kind of suspected John was going to try and tell his team about the loops. And I was kind of guessing that they might not know. Like, I was thinking maybe Yang might at least give the benefit of the doubt. However, when he does tell them what happened, basically RWBY does like the puppy dog eyes, and like, please tell me why you have dreams, like who's dying. And John lets, like, in his grief and nervousness of what's gonna happen next, because now, like, he's in uncharted territory, because he messed up, because now he realizes Weiss is the maiden. He's fallen in love with Weiss. Cinder's plans change, so now he doesn't really know 100% what's going to go on next. But he also realizes that this may be the closest he actually has to actually saving everyone. So he thinks, why not? And in his grief, he tries to tell everyone what happened. They don't believe him because he thinks he's having PTSD-induced nightmares of what might happen. He's heartbroken. He leaves. He bumps into Weiss. So what happens is, I believe in canon, it's mentioned by Osmond that there is a chance that this Pyrrha getting the maiden powers may actually mess with her memories. But it doesn't, mainly because Pyrrha doesn't live long enough for the powers and stuff like that. And the story implied that, basically, well, not implied, flat out told us that she doesn't have any issues. Weiss actually has issues where she's constantly thinking herself as Amber, so she's trying to figure out what's going on. John bumps into Weiss, and he realizes this is the last chance. And John tries to explain to Weiss what happened. And it's like, Weiss doesn't believe him. And then he drops what happened to Amber. Basically, a little girl, an apple, and all that. And then Weiss, because Weiss still has Summer or whatever her name's memories, realizes, wait a minute, you weren't there. How? And then Weiss realizes he might be telling the truth. And that completely freezes her. And then she kind of thinks back to everything that happened before that point. And she realizes he was telling the truth. He's telling the truth. And she basically starts consoling John. And John, heartbroken, finally realizes that someone finally listened. Because he actually did try and do this before to Osmond and other people, but they either freaked out, thought he was working for Cinder or the White Thing, or they tortured him to death. But now he's now crying, realizing that someone does believe him, finally. And he wants to try even harder to try and keep this specific timeline, because he doesn't know if he'll be able to survive the next loop, because he thinks he'll break down. Spoiler alert, he does. He completely has a mental breakdown once another loop happens. Everything continues as normal. The finals happen. John, suspects something's going on with Cinder and her team with Emerald and her powers. Doesn't realize what's up. And then he notices something strange. The final between Yang and some random schmuck. Yang wins, and he's thinking, oh, well, something's gonna happen. But nothing happens. And then he looks at Cinder and her group. He throws something at them. They shatter, realizing, and then instead of doing all this shelf and fraud, Cinder just orders Adam to just basically hijack the PA system. And basically said, now we're gonna kill y'all. Which of course sets up the whole event of the beacon attack. And basically everything kind of happens as normal. Weiss promises John, please save our daughters. Like, Weiss doesn't call her Yang and Blake, call her our daughters, because that's so sweet. Because in canon, Yang loses her arm from Adam, and Blake is so traumatized that she goes back to Menagerie, where she lived, and that whole thing happens. And Weiss basically tells John, please just save them, protect them from what's going to happen. And Weiss offers up a kind of cold logic at that point in time. I know it actually happens when they have the heart-to-heart, and But I'm only mentioning it now. Like, Cinder posits the theory that maybe that she is destined to die. Like, I know you want to save everyone, but it kind of comes off like Cinder needs to win this, which is actually what happens in canon. Cinder does win, and so Weiss is kind of saying that maybe she needs to win this. Maybe in order to end the loops, she needs to win this. And so they promise to, but John still doesn't want Weiss to die because he realizes he has genuine feelings for him. I mean, not for her. And she him. And they kind of come to an understanding, like, we're going to at least try and beat this. And if we both survive, we'll get married. We'll be fine. We'll try and get married. John goes and gives birth to his mom because mom, remember earlier when I said he went to the bar because he was hearing his family make whoopee? Yeah, the wife gets pregnant. He gives birth on a bulkhead as they leave Beacon because they also kill Neo. John realizes what was going on with his aura. He realized he lost himself. His aura comes back to life, and he goes and tries to save Blake and Yang from Adam. He basically takes like a griffin and crashes into the cafeteria, and him, Neptune, and Sun, because Sun and Neptune actually show up to back up John, actually go to fight Adam, while Yang and Blake go to find Weiss. Which is what happened. So Weiss, realizing that she's destined to die, but she still wants to try. She still has that sliver of hope that maybe she might be able to win. She confronts Cinder. And this is where it takes a turn for the weird. At the end of all that, Weiss manages to kill Cinder. Like, stabs her through the chest with like an ice version of John's weapon. And at that point in time, what happens is fate itself, like literally, an entity that is implied to be fate, basically kills John. So basically, Sun and Neptune are just basically kind of halfway passed out. John and Adam are like locking blades, and then randomly something happens to basically force them to kind of hit them, deal death blows to each other. And John dies, and of course the loop happens. He mentally breaks down because he realizes that now fate purposely went out of its way to fuck him over. Weiss is still alive, so she actually goes into the cafeteria, sees John's dead body, and breaks and starts crying. And then she uses a glyph and to try and reverse time to save John. However, it gets taken over by fate, and we get the truth of what happened. So what happened is the canon events actually did happen, but John couldn't get over his grief of Pyra's death, so he wanders the forest and basically let a bunch of Beowulfs kill him. Fate, not liking that because fate had like greater ideals for John in the future past Pyra's death, started bringing him back to before the initiation. He thinks that it's his semblance, that he can do this to basically try and save Pyra and everyone. And Weiss is actually watching all this. Now he's slowly starting to lose hope, and it breaks Weiss. And so fate gives her an ultimatum: you let Cinder kill you, or I bring John back in time. That's basically the ultimatum that fate gives Weiss. And so it brings her back to when Cinder's about to kill her. And like Yang and Blake are like holding her in so she can do the death blow. Weiss reluctantly goes with fate at first. And when Cinder's charging her, Weiss actually betrays, like I said, which basically just name drops the title, where she basically kills Cinder again, and then she jumps out the building as Cinder's dying. And then basically gives the metaphorical middle finger to fate itself. Like, literally does this to fate itself. Telling it that your jaw's gonna break long before you even get what you want. So, and basically gives it her own terms, like either you let me and John have this happy ending, or you're gonna constantly bash your head in the wall trying to get John to follow your orders. Fate actually has no choice but to see logic and basically manipulates events so that way John is actually saved. So now John is recovering. Finally everyone's dead. Roman, Neo, Emerald, and Mercury, Cinder, all dead. At this point when the author wrote it, Salem wasn't even a factor, hence why Cinder was like the big bad. John doesn't know what to do with his life because he spent so long doing these loops. He doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't know how to react. And the story ends with Yang and Blake, with all of them agreeing to go, actually willingly go to Menagerie just to meet Blake's parents. And also Weiss kind of revealing that, oh yeah, me and John are engaged because of the promise we both made. And John realizes, like, maybe I'll give it a shot. And that's the plot. Even I just realized, even like paraphrasing as I did, it's still, this video's nearly an hour, and I only just did the plot. Let's go. Let's just do this. Grammar errors. There's not a lot of grammar errors. There's some grammar errors scattered throughout the story. Let's actually, I'm saving characters for last, just getting the pacing and grammar out of the way. Pacing, everything is a very slow burn at first, but once the events of Mountain Glen start, it picks up considerably. So the first half is very slow paced, but the second half starts to get very, very fast paced. So it's very leveraging moment. So it's like it's making everything in the beginning slow, so that way when it actually starts picking up, it picks up without not needing to slow down anymore. And finally, characters. The characters made this story. It absolutely made this story. I already talked about John more or less throughout the entire story, so I'm not gonna touch upon him. Yang and Blake, they're pretty much the same. They do get like a sister dynamic because the author does really go above and beyond with that family, that running joke of Yang just calling them family. And when I actually told my friend about it, and I posted like a picture of Smug Yang, he goes like, "Damn it, Barb!" It's like, "Yeah, damn it, Barb!" And it's really well written. But the star of the show is Weiss. Basically, Ruby and all of them, they're kind of sidelined. But I do want to say something about Weiss. Out of all the Team RWBY, Weiss was my least favorite character. I didn't particularly like Weiss. However, reading this story made me appreciate Weiss as a character much more. She's very hoity. She's very full of herself. She's basically the Schnee heir. But over the course of the story, she starts to warm up to John as a person because he realizes that I want to help you be a teammate, and she starts to see him in a new light when he goes to save Blake, and he realizes that there's more to you than meets the eye, and she starts falling for him. She starts falling in love with him, and she's actually kind of questioning herself because it's like it's John. He's lazy, apathetic, but for some reason I love him now. It's like I don't know what's going on. And, that's a big part of Weiss's character arc in this story is her trying to rationalize her feelings for John and realizing, just like John, that him, Yang, and Blake are now basically her family. And I got to the point where she basically promises Blake that, when she becomes leader of the SDC, she's actually gonna basically do like a bunch of progressive changes to help Faunus and stuff like that. And she's very comes off as extremely likable here, and becomes humble and becomes very flustered. She becomes like a typical tsundere sort of character, but beneath all that, she at the end of the day, she wants to protect her family, and she's willing to let herself die to protect her family. And that's actually very... I'm not like paraphrasing Weiss's character here, but honestly, I think in this context, Weiss's character arc, Weiss's character, I cannot describe it as much as I want to. It's just so hard to describe because I want you to go read this story yourself. I want you to do this. I want every one of my subscribers read this story. This story is absolutely worth it. And no amount of words talking about Weiss and her character and her character arc is going to do it justice. There's no chance. Would I recommend this story? You're damn right I would. Like, I mean what I said, that this story is now my personal favorite fan fiction of all time. I mean when I say that. Such high praise doesn't come naturally, because I thought Deluge, which is a Castlevania fanfiction that I plan on reading once it's finished, was going to be the story that beat Better Off Alone as my personal favorite fanfiction of all time, because I haven't even read all of Deluge, and what I love is already better than Better Off Alone. But now comes the time, it's like, will Deluge actually beat this story? That's scary to think about. That is very scary to think about. This story is without peer. This is a story, and I even looked up the story on TV Tropes. This was a story that made Kor Alaran famous. Like, this is the story that made him who he is. He changed RWBY writing. He basically popularized Peggy Sue stories with the RWBY characters. He did a lot of stuff that actually influenced how RWBY stories are written. And it all started here. And that is 100% respectable. I have a lot of respect for Kor now that I read this, because I like Professor Arc, but I thought that was mostly a comedy story, so that's fine. But this story is an unmitigated masterpiece. I wouldn't change anything with the story except fix up the grammar errors, and also fix the retcon at the beginning. Because in the beginning, the story does mention that John's never been burned alive by Cinder. The fact that he's fighting Cinder and he kind of realized it, so he kind of retconned in story that John has like an aversion to open flames. I think just fix up the grammar errors and just fix that little mistake. What would be my favorite part? There are so many favorite parts. Honestly, if I had to pick a favorite part, it would probably be the ultimate end and the ultimate build up to the family joke. It would be when John's about to fight Adam. Adam questions John. It's like, what is Blake to you? And then John goes, well, I've had many names. Monster. Oh, I actually want to look it up. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, yeah. Who are you? One of Osmond's pet huntsmen. Atlas Special Forces sent to protect the Schnee? And John goes, something altogether different. I've been called many things. I've been many things. Student, rogue, doctor, idiot, best friend, monster, lover. Everyone calls me something different. Blake, though, well, she called me daddy. I'm like, as soon as I read that part, I lost. It's like, that is the perfect build. That is the perfect build-up to that joke ever. And I actually stopped reading for like 5 minutes because I was actually laughing, because that is how to build up a joke really damn well. Hell, I also like to give the author credit for doing a 600,000 word story with like a very, very long running gag and not running into the ground with like the whole because throughout the story they constantly refer to each other as like the family members. Like Yang will sometimes call Blake's sister. It's like, oh come on sis, we gotta protect Daddy from Mommy. Maybe Daddy might go on the couch today. Or like Yang's talking to John. It's like, no Daddy, you don't understand my sister's love of erotic literature. And Blake's like, what? Wait, no, I don't read. We all know you read. I do have to, like, it takes a special level of skill in order to make a running gag last this long and not make it boring. Because they use the running gag for pretty much every single purpose. If he wants to be comedic, if he wants to be serious, if he wants to be dramatic, if he wants to be, like, do it lovey-dovey. With the whole thing with Adam, he does it as a taunt. It's just remarkable. And that gives absolute bonker skill. Like this, like Downs. It takes a massive amount of skill. It's just. I honestly think Kohara Allround might be the greatest fanfiction author of all time. No hesitation. I only read this one of Professor Arc, and I yet to read Civil War out of this recording. But if this level of quality keeps up, I may literally call Kohara Allround the greatest fanfiction author. Like, no hesitation. But yeah. If not the running gag, I would have to say him talking to Weiss near the end, where he basically opens up the past and Weiss finally realizes that he's telling the truth about the loop things. I thought that was very touching. If not that, there's so many really, really memorable moments that are just really, really epic that I can't pick just one. I can't. Everything about this story is so good. But yeah, that is. I don't really have anything more to say about this. I think at the end of the day, regardless if you like or hate RWBY, go out of your way to read this story. It's far worth your time, and even an over hour-long review doesn't do this story justice. Like, it genuinely doesn't. And I like to thank the person who suggested this story. That person gives all the praise for suggesting this story to me. And I don't really have anything more to say. So I guess I'll end it here. This has been Dark Symphony 777, and cut.